Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. At the AI company, there were always rumors that the president already had a wife, but in his heart, he carried the shadow of his white moonlight. Because of her, that man was so obsessed he could live and die for her. Toward the wife at home, he was cold and indifferent, hardly sparing her a glance. And I, Emma, the rightful wife in this story, could only sit quietly every day, nibbling at gossip like eating melon seeds until the day the white moonlight, Julia Miller, returned to the country. One afternoon, a colleague from the secretary's office, Sarah, leaned over and whispered to me. She said that just a few days ago, President Ethan had been spotted strolling downtown with Julia. To protect her, he had spent several $1 million to buy up every single secretly snapped photo. At the end, Sarah even sighed regretfully. The president is so pitiful, forced to marry someone he doesn't love. The only way he can shield the woman in his heart is like this. While Sarah was pitying Ethan for his loveless marriage, I froze in place. In that moment, I finally understood all of Ethan's strange behavior these past few days. Ever since 3 days ago, he had seemed distracted, his eyes unconsciously lingering on me. At night, he no longer spoke much as before, only staying silent and pouring all his strength into the night. Afterward, he would bury his face in the crook of my shoulder for a long time. When he finally left, I would touch the skin at my neck and discover the trace of tears still there. I had thought something must be wrong at the company, but now I realized it was because the joint assets of our marriage had suddenly lost several $1 million and he felt guilty toward me. I wanted to laugh. The corners of my lips curved slightly, but no smile came. Instead, I collapsed onto the desk in defeat, thinking bitterly. In the end, it was still Julia Miller. Just her presence alone was enough to break me apart. While I was still drowning in despair, a sharp knock sounded on the desk. I looked up to see Ethan standing right in front of me. He wore a black dress shirt, the collar carelessly undone to reveal his collarbone and a few faint red marks. His whole body radiated refined nobility mixed with a reckless ambiguity. I glared at him, but he acted as though he hadn't seen it, only giving a small nod to signal, "Come with me." Even after getting into the car, my mood hadn't improved. Ethan glanced at me several times, clearly aware of my emotions but saying nothing. I gave a soft sigh, keeping my eyes fixed on the window, lost in thought, until the car stopped in front of an upscale club in Manhattan. I looked at him in surprise. Since taking over the company, he had rarely arranged business meetings in places like this. "Why were we here today?" he explained. "Claire invited us to attend a welcome party." I froze, then immediately understood. My sister Claire had always been close to Julia Miller since childhood. Julia had just returned to the country, so Claire hosting a welcome party was only natural. So that was it. Ethan was afraid I would see through his feelings for Julia Miller, so he used my sister as a pretext. He really did know how to be considerate of my emotions. I pressed my lips together in self-mockery, opened the car door with a dark face and stepped out. The whole way, I walked angrily straight toward the private room. At that moment, Ethan, who had seemed distracted the whole time, suddenly grabbed my hand tightly. He clenched his teeth, his voice filled with anger, an anger even harder to understand than mine. "Emma, why are you in such a hurry? Why are you walking so fast? It's like you're running. Do you even see me at all?" How shameless to twist the truth. He had hidden from me that he spent millions of dollars to buy up those photos of his stroll with Julia Miller, and I hadn't said a single word. Now I had only walked a little faster than him, and he was blocking my way, accusing me. Love or no love, it was clear enough. I yanked my hand out of his grasp and deliberately sneered. "If you want me to step aside, just say it outright." There was no need to stir up trouble. As soon as the words left my mouth, Ethan's face instantly darkened, his anger exploding. But unusually, he didn't argue back. Instead, he closed his eyes and took several deep breaths. When he opened them again, he had regained his composure. "No matter what, we're already married. Divorce is impossible. Don't even dream about it." I pushed open the door while throwing back. "Don't worry. As long as you haven't earned back that money, you're not going anywhere either." Just as my words were fading, the door cracked open from the inside and someone stepped out. My hand almost collided with the person, but Ethan pulled me back just in time. "Eric, what are you doing here?" Ethan asked. When I saw who it was, I froze in surprise, and then a flicker of worry crossed my mind. "How's your mom doing?" Eric smiled gently, sidestepping my question. "Sorry, I didn't get the chance to tell you I'd be coming too." The answer felt half-hearted, even puzzling. I hadn't yet asked again when he blinked mischievously. "I came for Julia's welcome party, though technically I returned to the States a few days before she did. Now I guess I'm finally done being just another international student." I laughed and teased. "No wonder everyone fights to study abroad. Turns out one trip overseas is all it takes for the junior to come back as the senior." I was about to walk in with him when suddenly my arm was yanked back hard. In the blink of an eye, I was pulled against Ethan's chest. He held me tightly, his piercing gaze locked on Eric, sharp and watchful like a panther guarding its territory. "What are you doing?" I struggled against him but couldn't break free. The atmosphere turned strangely tense. I glanced between the two of them, sensing something was off, though I couldn't name it. Then Ethan laughed, the coldness around him vanishing instantly. He bent his head close to my ear and whispered, "Honey, I just remembered. Eric never gave us a wedding gift, did he? Should he make it up now?" I froze, glaring at him, and jabbed my elbow into his side. "Don't make things up. He already sent me a gift that day. We're all friends. Why do you hold grudges over such small things?" Ethan clasped my hand firmly, a bright smile spreading across his face. How was I supposed to know someone would be too embarrassed to admit it, sneaking around to contact my wife in secret? I suppose it makes sense. His status is different now, so he can only do it behind the scenes. I frowned, baffled by how cutting his words sounded. He and Eric had always been friends. Why couldn't I be? Did I need to hold a press conference just to talk to a friend? Eric, however, remained calm, unbothered by Ethan's sharp remarks. He lowered his head slightly, his voice gentle. "I couldn't make it back for your wedding, Ethan. If you hold it against me, that's understandable. But Emma, you know how bad things were for me overseas at the time." Behind his gold-rimmed glasses, I caught the flicker of pain and loneliness in his eyes. Besides, my mother's condition took a serious turn then. I really couldn't leave her. God, it was impossible. Guilt welled up in my chest. I nearly wanted to turn and smack Ethan a few times. Eric's mother had been tormented by his father for years. Her health was never good. It had taken everything just to escape abroad with Eric. But even then her mind drifted in and out. One year when I was overseas spending New Year's Eve with my dad, we visited them and I met her. That day, she had mistaken me for Eric's girlfriend, her mind confused. Yet, in the blink of an eye, so many years had already passed. I was never good at comforting others, so I forced a stiff smile and found an excuse to change the subject. "Ethan didn't mean anything by it. Don't take it to heart. Anyway, let's not stand out here. Come on, or Claire will get anxious waiting." With that, I tugged Ethan along inside, clumsily using the most obvious trick I knew to steer the conversation away. I didn't hear what Ethan muttered as the two of them brushed past each other, but his voice was cold. "Using your mother as an excuse to beg for sympathy? That's pathetic." Inside the private room, the atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and chatter. Julia Miller, just like before, was surrounded by people, shining brilliantly in the center of the crowd. Instinctively, I chose the farthest corner, trying to avoid the blinding presence of hers. Ethan didn't follow me. Instead, he went straight to Julia, casually congratulating her on returning. I hesitated, wondering if I should also walk over and say a few words. Considering the relationship between our two families, avoiding her altogether would seem improper. But the truth was, I really didn't want to face Julia at all. While I was still wavering, Eric walked up and handed me a glass of wine. I accepted it with a polite smile and thanked him. His eyes, however, fell on Ethan and Julia, and he sighed. It looks like after all these years, Ethan still can't let Julia go. By instinct, I wanted to defend Ethan, but after fumbling for words, nothing came out. Instead, I tilted back the glass, letting the alcohol drown out the frustration in my chest. Eric didn't notice my mood. He continued speaking slowly. "Back then, you said you wanted to try one last time to push forward the marriage between the two families. It's been 2 years now. Did you get what you hoped for or not?" I stayed silent, recalling every moment of my marriage over the past 2 years. To be fair, Ethan treated me well. Every business trip he brought back gifts. On the nightstand, there was always a glass of milk kept at 45 degrees. If I so much as glanced at something on a jewelry display, it would soon appear on my vanity. My closet never lacked the latest dresses from the brands I loved, always the newest season's collection. Even in our intimate life, he was attentive and considerate. But neither of us had ever once said the word love. Compared to most couples, we were far more fortunate. Still, the human heart is a bottomless pit. Rumors in the company grew thicker by the day, and the media never stopped spinning stories about his supposed affairs. Every hour, every minute I was reminded, having a person doesn't mean you've won. Only having their love makes you the true victor. A suffocating ache rose in my chest. I lifted the glass again to drink, but before I could, Ethan strode over and yanked it out of my hand. He slammed it heavily onto the table, splashing wine across Eric's shirt. I stared at him, completely bewildered by whatever game he was playing this time. He scratched his head on one side, then the other before forcing out a single line. "Alcohol isn't good for your health." I shot back. "So what about that drink you just had with Julia? Was that water?" I'd only meant it as a jab. But unexpectedly, he calmly handed me his own glass, a smug look on his face. Of course I take my health seriously. If I can avoid alcohol, I absolutely do. Not like some people who spent years overseas treating liquor like water. As he spoke, he cast a meaningful glance to the side. The implication was clear. Eric's hand, which had been dabbing at the spilled wine on his shirt, froze for a moment. His gaze lifted slightly, icy and sharp. I frowned too, finding Ethan's words far too cutting. Eric's father had been an alcoholic, and whenever he was drunk, he would beat Eric's mother mercilessly. That was a scar that would never fade from Eric's heart, and Ethan knew it. Yet he still deliberately brought it up. No matter how gentle Eric's temperament usually was, he couldn't endure provocation like that. His eyes, always warm and calm, turned to ice, the reflection in his glasses glinting like the edge of a blade. He let out a cold laugh, ripped off the wine-stained glasses, and hurled them onto the table. "President Ethan, you underestimate me. I may not have much in my hands, but when it comes to willpower, I'm unshakable. What I despise, I won't touch a single drop of. What I love, I won't give up an inch of. Only people like you think you're entitled to cheat your whole life, never knowing when enough is enough. I'm far more faithful than that. What's going on here?" As the two of them were arguing fiercely, Julia Miller walked over. Eric, always mindful of appearances, immediately stopped, raising a hand to block the rest of his unfinished words. "Ethan, I spoke out of turn just now. I'm sorry." But Ethan, already fuming, wasn't about to let it go so easily. I quickly grabbed his arm, pressing him down onto the sofa with a forced smile to smooth things over. "Sorry, Julia. He's had too much to drink. He's not thinking straight." Julia's eyes flickered with concern. "Do you want me to have someone bring some hangover soup?" I politely shook my head to refuse, but to my shock, Ethan suddenly sprang up, grabbed Eric by the collar, and dragged him straight toward the door. "No need to bother anyone. We'll go drink our hangover soup ourselves." I panicked and moved to follow, but Julia gently held my arm back, her voice soft. "Let them handle it themselves. Come on, let's talk for a bit." Talk. I was forced to sit down, my mind flashing through all sorts of scenarios. A mistress challenging the wife, perhaps. My hand tightened quietly in my lap, ready to strike back at any moment. But to my surprise, when Julia opened her mouth, she was much more hesitant than I had imagined. "Emma, you don't like me very much, do you?" I had been bracing for a fight, and at first I couldn't even react. She furrowed her brows slightly, the fragile sadness of a beautiful woman hanging over her. "Maybe you've sensed the relationship between us, which is why you're keeping your distance. I know it's hard for you to accept in such a short time, but please believe me. What we have is real. We're already preparing for marriage. If possible, I truly hope to receive your blessing." Julia's face shone with determination, her voice sincere, and even the way she clasped my hand carried a reverence for her feelings. If the person on the other side of this so-called true love hadn't been my husband, maybe I would have truly blessed them. But as it was, I coldly pulled my hand back and refused without mercy. Sorry, I'm not that generous. A flicker of sadness crossed Julia's face. In that instant, the image of my colleague Sarah lamenting the loveless marriage of President Ethan overlapped in my mind. The momentum I had just gathered collapsed completely, and the words I wanted to say stayed stuck in my throat. I won't be attending your wedding. As soon as the words left my mouth, I stood up to leave. But before I could reach the door, someone shouted, "Ethan and Eric are fighting." I froze in shock, pushing through the crowd in a rush. When I got inside, Ethan had Eric pinned down, each punch crashing down with a cold wind as though he meant to beat him to death. My heart pounded violently as I lunged forward, waving off the people nearby to make room before throwing myself into the middle to stop him. Even after they pulled him back, Ethan seemed possessed, still straining to rush forward again. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught someone not far away secretly filming the president of our company beating a man in public. If that video spread to the board, their spit alone would be enough to drown him. I immediately signaled a few friends to take care of the person with the phone, then raised my hand and struck Ethan hard on the arm to jolt him back to his senses. But to my surprise, after that slap, his eyes suddenly turned red. He stared at me in disbelief, his expression filled with both grievance and pain, as though I had just committed an unforgivable crime. You dared hit me for him. You dared hit me for him. You dared hit me for him." Ethan repeated the sentence over and over, his voice climbing higher each time. If it hadn't been such an inappropriate place, I might have clapped my hands and praised him. He really had the makings of a singer born with that kind of strong male voice. While he kept shouting his accusations, Julia Miller came over, covering her mouth with a faint smile. Embarrassed, I tugged lightly at Ethan's sleeve, gritting my teeth and whispering, "Lower your voice. I'm doing this for your own good." He was still angry, but at last he listened, bowing his head slightly, his hot breath brushing against my cheek. "Right, you're always using these throwaway lines to pacify me. Just like in college, aren't you? What does college have to do with anything?" I shot back. "Mr. Big President, you're hitting someone in public. Do you want to make the front page of the tabloids? Because I don't." A flicker of pride flashed in Ethan's eyes, his gloom gone in an instant. "Don't worry, absolutely no newspaper would dare publish a photo of us together." He even tilted his head up, looking at me with such smugness it made my blood boil. So he'd already decided to completely lock down the news about Mrs. Ethan Tyler and me, so I could quietly step aside for someone new. I ground my teeth and glanced at Julia. She only smiled softly, so gentle it was impossible to hate her. No wonder Ethan liked her. She was exactly the archetype of the legendary white moonlight. The more I thought about it, the more bitterness welled up until it turned into resentment toward Ethan. If he'd never liked me from the start, then when he was forced into a political marriage, he should have fought tooth and nail to resist. Instead, he accepted it smoothly, making me stupidly believe he had at least some feelings for me. Sensing the change in my mood, Ethan furrowed his brow. Before he could ask, I quickly pulled my hand away, not wanting him to see my eyes turning red. "Eric's pretty badly hurt. I need to take him to the hospital first." "Emma, what do you mean?" He forced down his anger and grabbed my hand again. "I'm hurt too. Don't you see?" I yanked my hand free and shoved him lightly toward Julia. "You've got Julia here. I'm leaving." I gave Eric a small nod, signaling him to come with me. He coughed weakly, his voice faint but still polite. "Sorry, Emma. I have to trouble you again." "It's fine," I answered absently, my mind elsewhere. "Troubling me is only natural. This is all Ethan's fault anyway." Behind me, Ethan's voice calling my name grew smaller and smaller. Before I turned down the hallway, I couldn't help glancing back. Julia was standing in front of him, saying something, and Ethan, head lowered, was obediently listening. None of the impulsive anger from moments ago remained. "Emma, could you help me put some ointment on?" Eric's voice suddenly broke through my wandering thoughts. He held out a cotton swab, giving me a hopeful little smile, looking both apologetic and helpless, as though he truly was inconveniencing me. I took it, following the nurse's instructions, gently dabbing medicine on the cut at the corner of his mouth. Eric's gaze stayed on my face. After a long moment, he sighed softly and spoke. "I'm sorry. It's my fault you and Ethan fought." I didn't respond, only asked bluntly, Why did he hit you? Eric gave a bitter laugh. I told him not to hurt you because of Julia Miller, but he told me to stay out of things that didn't concern me. My hand holding the swab froze for a moment before I quietly continued. He also said that if you hadn't insisted on marrying him, he wouldn't have lost the right to pursue Julia Miller. That this whole deadlock situation is your doing. So whatever he does, you're supposed to deserve it. That's why I stepped in, because I don't think you should have to endure it. The hallway buzzed with noise and chatter, but somehow it all faded away. Only Eric's voice remained, each word heavy with a sigh echoing in my ears. Emma, Ethan doesn't love you. The marriage you fought so hard to make happen only brings torment to you both. On the way home, I stopped to meet with a lawyer. By the time I returned, it was already late at night. Ethan still hadn't come back. The whole house was dark, not a single light on. Too tired to flip the switch, I felt my way up the stairs. You're back. The deep hoarse voice drifted from the living room, startling me so badly I nearly slipped on the step. Why didn't you turn on the light? I asked. Ethan stayed silent for a moment before switching on a floor lamp. Standing in the corner, his face looked pale, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of panic in his expression. The wound on his hand was still untreated. Had Julia not cared for him at all? I stared at his hand until his fingers twitched slightly, betraying unease. His voice carried a trace of guilt. I'm sorry. I lost control today. I froze, not knowing how to react. Ethan had always been proud and stubborn. Back in high school, he once fought with a gang of bullies outside campus. They fought dirty, even dragged their parents into it, making trouble at school. Ethan's parents had been furious, but they never stood up for him, only said coldly, "If you've got the guts to cause trouble, you'd better have the ability to fix it yourself." The bullies, emboldened, forced him to bow and apologize, threatening to call the police if he refused. But Ethan was so defiant, he'd rather be taken to the station than say a single word of apology. That same man who had been so unyielding was now suddenly saying, "I'm sorry." It was such a rare thing to hear. I clutched the stair railing tightly, unable to move. "Why are you apologizing?" His voice was tinged with self-mockery. Julia said, "My outburst only made things harder for you. So I was wrong." I let go of the railing and sank down beside him, my exhausted body collapsing into the seat. Silence settled between us, heavy and bitter, pressing down on my chest until I could barely breathe. Once again, it was about Julia Miller. To me, Julia had always been like a shadow cast over my life. With my sister Claire, a business prodigy and a shining example, my parents placed impossibly high expectations on my genes. But the truth disappointed them deeply. I was only an ordinary child. Slowly, they gave up on me altogether, pouring all their energy into Claire instead, until Julia appeared. Brilliant, dazzling Julia Miller, a musical genius. It was as if my parents had been jolted awake. Maybe Emma isn't good at business, but what if she has a gift for art? From that moment, Julia became the target I was forced to chase. But fate was never fair. At 12, she won her first International Music Award. At 14, she held concerts around the world. At 15, she received an acceptance letter from the prestigious X-Men Conservatory of Music. And me? After practicing until my hands shook and cramped, I barely managed to catch the eye of a respectable teacher. The more awards Julia racked up, the more my mother grew dissatisfied with me. By the countless times I was forced onto a stage to perform at some banquet, I saw the look in my parents' eyes. Disappointment mixed with anger. My whole body trembled uncontrollably. Every gaze in the room fixed on me. My limbs froze, my throat tightened, and no sound came out. My father urged me forward impatiently, his voice sharp with irritation. My mother asked anxiously if I felt unwell, but her hand gripping my shoulder only pressed down harder. So strict, so unyielding, she wouldn't allow the slightest resistance. Just as I was trying to take a deep breath to steady myself, someone stepped up beside me and pried my mother's hand off my shoulder. He smiled brightly, half shielding me from view. "Auntie, let me try. Emma just learned Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." That was the first time I met Ethan. From then on, he always stood in front of me again and again, pulling me back from the edge of collapse. Later, when my parents went abroad to expand their business, they no longer had the time or energy to torment me. Slowly, I escaped from Julia Miller's shadow. Until one day I heard Ethan himself say, "Emma isn't good enough. She could never compare to Julia." Because of that one sentence, there was a time when I completely despaired of Ethan. Yet he had once treated me so well that I clung stubbornly to a shred of unwillingness, even going to beg my sister Claire to arrange the alliance marriage between the DW and Tyler families. The fault wasn't Ethan's. The fault was mine. Blind, stubborn, unwilling to let go, I whispered softly, "It's not your fault." But inside, the bitterness in my heart surged, and something else slowly rose with it. In that moment, I felt like I suddenly understood so much. Ethan and Julia were both good people. That they didn't love me wasn't because Ethan was too perfect, nor because Julia had done anything wrong. The fault was mine. Too weak, too obstinate. I clung to someone, forcing him into a dead end. Ethan must have heard my whisper because his face shifted, his eyes fixing on me with a rare trace of tenderness. "Emma, are you feeling unwell? Why do you look so pale?" As he spoke, he reached a hand toward my forehead. Then he snapped, his voice sharp. "Eric, what were you doing all afternoon? You couldn't even take care of her properly." I pulled a packet of documents from my purse, placing them in his hand while avoiding his touch. Ethan frowned, confused, and unfolded the papers. When he saw what they were, he froze, stunned into silence. "What do you mean by this?" I ignored the hollow, weightless feeling in my chest and shrugged, pretending to be calm. Once you make up your mind, you can't let negative emotions become a burden to others. It means setting things back on the right track. "Ethan, let's get a divorce." He still didn't move. His fingers clenched the divorce paper so tightly that the thin sheets crumpled in his grip. Lowering his head, his voice came out. "You said back on the right track. What do you mean? Are you saying we've been having an affair?" What was he talking about? I hadn't even had a chance to stop him from spouting nonsense before he suddenly lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, filled with unshed tears, his expression both fierce and pitiful. He grabbed me with desperate strength, leaving me speechless, my throat blocked. "You always treat me like this. The moment he shows up, you abandon me. Emma, do you not have a heart?" He pressed on, questioning me as he stepped closer and closer. Reflexively, I backed away. That small retreat must have touched a fragile nerve because Ethan suddenly lunged, forcing me back into the corner of the sofa. I pushed at him, but he caught my wrists and pinned them down. "Don't get worked up," I started, but before I could finish, I realized he wasn't hurting me. He had only trapped my hands, pressing them firmly against his chest. His heartbeat thundered beneath my palm. Heat radiated through his skin, leaving me frozen, not knowing what he meant to do. He clutched my hand tightly and then lowered his head, tears spilling as though he had suffered the greatest grievance of his life. "The moment he came back, you ran to see him. I know you still have feelings for him. But Emma, I spent years trying to finally marry you. This time, can't you choose me instead of him? I swear I won't lose control again. Whatever you hate about me, I'll change. Just don't divorce me." I froze, my mouth falling open as if I'd turned to stone. When I drafted the divorce papers, I had anticipated Ethan's reaction. He might be ecstatic with joy, or he might explode in fury. I had even prepared a plan so we could part ways with some dignity. But the scene before me was nothing I had ever imagined. Tears fell one by one onto my arm. That tall, strong figure shrank before me, sobbing helplessly, unable to hide his grief. My other hand lifted, then dropped, then finally rested awkwardly on his shoulder, patting gently in hesitation. "Don't cry anymore." Before the welcome party, I hadn't even seen him. I didn't even know he was back in the country. His sobs faltered, his teeth clenched as he spat out each word. Damn it, this must be Eric setting me up again. Perhaps even he realized how out of place his anger was in that moment, because his voice quickly shifted, trembling and pitiful. His eyes still shimmered with tears, but behind them, he sneaked glances at me, secretly searching my expression. "So, could you not divorce me?" I bit my lip, my face torn with conflict. "Isn't divorce what you wanted all along?" "Me? Want divorce? Why would I want that?" His voice cracked with disbelief. Then in an instant, he flared up like a startled cat. Fur standing on end, his anger bursting out. "Did that bastard Eric say something to you again? He's cunning. Whatever he told you, don't believe it. Or at least don't believe it right away. Ask me first." "Okay, I pressed my lips together, sinking into silence. It was true that Ethan liked Julia Miller. That was undeniable. But destroying my marriage brought Eric no benefit whatsoever. Why would he lie to me? Yet Ethan's reaction didn't seem like an act either. You're right. I shouldn't have listened to only one side. Back in college you once said you liked. The sudden ring of his phone cut me off. Instinctively my eyes turned to the sound. The name Julia Miller flashed brightly on Ethan's screen. He was about to silence the call, but I stopped him. Answer it. If she's calling this late, it must be urgent. The moment he picked up, I stood and started for the stairs to give them privacy. But Ethan grabbed my hand, his voice urgent. Your sister's been in a car accident. She's in the ER. Outside the emergency room, the glowing red words in critical care blazed before me. My heart, already pounding wildly, seemed to stop altogether. Ethan held me up firmly, not daring to let go. His trembling voice trying to comfort me. Don't be afraid. I've already called in a specialist. He'll be here soon. Julia saw me then and staggered toward me. Her clothes dirty, hair in disarray, streaks of blood on her face. Whether hers or someone else's, I couldn't tell. She was a mess, frantic and desperate. Emma, you finally came. The doctor said they need a family member's signature. But I can't sign. She looked so pitiful that even as her sister, I felt I couldn't match the depth of her distress. Worried for Claire, I couldn't help but curse silently. Why did my sister have to be so close to her? Their bond was far too deep. Fortunately, the specialist Ethan brought in was excellent. After 4 tense hours, my sister finally pulled through the danger. I had just breathed a sigh of relief when Julia suddenly collapsed to the floor. Ethan still wouldn't release me, holding me firmly by his side. Anxious to the point of fury, I snapped. She just fainted. Why are you still holding on to me? Carry her to a hospital bed. By the time Julia was confirmed to be fine, dawn had already broken. I let out a weary sigh. What a cursed day. 2 trips to the hospital in less than 24 hours. Ethan, hands on his hips, sighed as well. Yeah, it really is cursed. Then he opened his mouth. I remembered the unfinished matter from the night before, but before I could speak, Ethan quickly pressed his hand over my mouth, his expression pitiful, almost begging for forgiveness. Today has already been unlucky enough. Let's save the divorce talk for later. Okay, honey. I stared at him for a few seconds, then stepped back and said calmly, I know this isn't the right time to talk about divorce, but there's one thing I have to ask. Seeing how serious I was, Ethan's expression sobered as well. Go ahead. My fingers curled tightly into my palm. On New Year's Eve, our junior year of college at the bar outside campus, you said something, Ethan. He lowered his head, repeating in a heavy tone, New Year's Eve junior year. I nodded. That sentence had been etched into my memory, and now I spoke it out loud again. Who could ever like Emma? She's nothing. She'll never compare to Julia Miller. With each word I uttered, his pupils widened further, panic filling his eyes. No, that's impossible. He grabbed me frantically, his face full of agitation. That night I was going to confess to you, but then I heard you and Eric were together, so I went drinking to numb myself. I was too drunk to remember what I said, but I know my limits. I would never say something like that to you. His words grew chaotic, but my heart pounded wildly, my eyes widening in shock. That night, you were going to confess to me? Yes. He nodded vigorously, afraid I wouldn't believe him. But you were abroad then. I'd already bought my ticket, but then I got a message from Eric. He said the 2 of you were together. He even sent me a video of you visiting his mother. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. I didn't believe him, so I called you, but he was the one who answered. My heart jolted violently. In an instant, memories pulled me back to that day 3 years ago. I had gone to visit Eric's mother, and before leaving, I stopped by the restroom. I'd left my phone on the table, and when I came back, I saw Eric holding it. He smiled naturally and said, I thought you forgot your phone. I was going to take it to you. So at that moment, he must have answered Ethan's call. Ethan kept repeating, desperate, I would never say those words. Absolutely never. Quietly, I pulled out my phone and opened a video. The setting in the footage was that same bar from that night. On the screen was Ethan, his face flushed with agitation, his voice rushed with expectation. Who could ever like Emma? She's nothing. She'll never compare to Julia Miller. It was the video I had tortured myself with, replaying it again and again. In front of me now, Ethan's face went pale with disbelief, utterly shaken. Why? Why would I say something like that? I don't know, but it doesn't matter anymore. I put my phone away calmly. From the moment I decided to marry you, I should have let that sentence go. But I couldn't, and so I only brought myself pain. Hearing this, Ethan grew even more desperate. He gripped my shoulders tightly, his expression more serious than I had ever seen. No, Emma, it's not like that. Being betrayed by someone you trust is already unbearable pain. Even if it wasn't intentional on my part, you had to carry all of it alone. If you hate me, if you resent me, that's your right. But if you truly feel nothing at all anymore, that would be the cruelest abandonment of me. So please don't let go. If you won't, then I'll find out the truth of that night. His eyes burned with such intensity that my face flushed. I had never wanted to let him go. I had never been with Eric. Yes, I did visit his mother, but only out of politeness between friends, and I hadn't even been alone. My sister Claire was with me that day. Ethan stiffened instantly. A flicker of joy lit up his eyes, spreading slowly to the corners of his lips. If that night I had really confessed, would you have chosen to be with me? I nodded. Yes, because right before I received that video, I had already decided to dial your number. I just wanted to say Happy New Year and I like you. After I confessed my feelings honestly, Ethan still couldn't let go of the need to clear his name. He immediately flew back to the city where our university was, saying that his roommates, who had drunk with him that night, were still there. I tried to persuade him not to, but he wouldn't listen, so I had no choice but to let him go. But as soon as he left, something happened that completely upended everything I thought I knew. During the days my sister was in the hospital, Julia Miller was almost always by her side. She even cared for my sister more than I did, her own flesh and blood. To show my gratitude, that day I went to the hospital half an hour early, planning to let her go home and rest. I happily carried breakfast and pushed open the door, only to nearly drop everything in my hands at the sight before me. My sister, with her right leg still in a cast, was straining to pull Julia Miller down, kissing her over and over. And Julia, still elegant and composed, didn't resist at all. She simply let my sister cling to her. I stood frozen in the doorway, struck as if by lightning. When the three of us finally sat down together, my mood had steadied somewhat, and that's when my sister spoke frankly. She admitted that she and Julia had been together for a long time, but kept it secret out of fear that our parents couldn't accept it. My heart was in turmoil and I couldn't help but demand, "Why did you hide it from me too?" Julia's eyes widened in surprise. "We thought you already knew." Then she gave an embarrassed smile. "You've always seemed distant with me, so I assumed it was because you discovered our relationship, and that's why. So, at the welcome party," she continued, "I just wanted to use the opportunity to get closer to you. I never thought it would backfire." I suddenly understood. So that was what she meant. My sister barely paid attention to my muttered words. She only clutched Julia's hand tightly, glaring at me in warning. "When I'm discharged, we'll go abroad to register our marriage. All you need to do is give us your blessing. Not a single extra word. Understood?" I quickly plastered on a smile, standing up to massage her shoulders and back obediently. "Don't worry. I'll definitely give you my blessing. I won't dare say anything inappropriate. Honestly, I don't have any resentment toward you. I've always respected and admired Julia." Only when my sister's face softened with satisfaction did I dare secretly wipe the sweat from my forehead. Thank goodness no one else knew that I once misunderstood Ethan and Julia. Otherwise, my sister would have skinned me alive. As I kept flattering the two of them, the atmosphere grew much lighter. My sister even generously promised to gift me the platinum handbag I'd been coveting for ages. Just as we were about to finalize this little deal, a knock came at the door. Eric stood outside holding a bouquet of flowers, smiling warmly. "Ladies gathering, would you allow a gentleman to join?" The smile I had just been wearing disappeared instantly, tighter than if something had caught in my throat. My sister was about to invite him in, but Julia gave me a quick glance, then shook her head ever so slightly. My sister immediately understood. Lowering her gaze and keeping silent, playing with Julia's fingers instead. Of course, that small exchange didn't escape Eric's eyes, but his expression didn't change. He kept his calm, gentle smile, still standing patiently at the door. In the small garden behind the hospital, I walked with a show of composure. Eric followed quietly, still holding the bouquet tightly in his hands. I heard people say that 3 years ago, you and I were together. My sudden words broke the silence. People often reveal their flaws when they're relaxed, and I wanted to catch him off guard. I had already imagined how Eric would react, surprised at first, then immediately denying it. But the truth proved I never understood him at all. He only gave a faint, "Ah." His tone was so calm it was unnerving. "So you found out after all?" The fire of fury inside me roared to life. I stopped in my tracks, glaring at him in disbelief. "Why did you do it?" He gave a cold laugh, tossing the bouquet into a nearby trash can. His whole demeanor shifted. Gone was the gentle warmth he usually wore. What replaced it was cold, dark contempt. "Because I love you. I want to have you. But your damned eyes only ever look at that bastard Ethan." His face hardened as he closed the distance between us, every step radiating a dangerous aura. "I even wanted to lock you away so you'd only ever see me. But that worthless scum, my father, destroyed everything I had. Aside from pretending to be pitiful in front of you, I had no other way." Emma, his grip on my arm tightened, his gaze twisted with both pain and madness. "Tell me, what else could I do?" Before his words had even faded, his body was suddenly thrown backward. Ethan stood there panting, shielding me in his arms. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "No." Eric slowly pushed himself up, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. His bitter smile was laced with scorn. "Emma, are you really sure you want to stay with him? In his heart, you will never compare to Julia Miller." "Don't listen to him." Ethan cut in quickly, desperate. "I found the proof. It's all here in my phone." He thrust it toward me, but I didn't take it. Instead, I stepped forward to stand firmly at his side. "No need. I believe you." Ethan's face instantly flushed red like a boy caught off guard. Bashful yet delighted. "Oh my God, you actually said that in front of someone else." My eyes drifted back to Eric, my emotions more tangled than ever. There was a time when I naively thought the three of us would always remain friends. But 3 years had passed and nothing was the same anymore. I had never once felt anything beyond friendship for him. Even if Ethan didn't exist, I still would not love him. I let out a quiet sigh, my voice steady. "It was my trust that let you lead me around in circles time and again. Eric, our friendship ends here. Let's not see each other anymore." On the way home, Ethan laughed uncontrollably, almost like a madman. Irritated, I turned to him and held out my hand. "Show me the evidence." He instantly shut his mouth, flashing a pitiful grin as he handed over his phone. "Didn't you just say you trusted me?" I pretended to be inscrutable, ruffling his hair on purpose. "In front of others, I'll stand by you without question, but in private, we need to keep facts and feelings separate." He nodded eagerly, rubbing his head against my shoulder like an oversized child. Yes, you're absolutely right, my dear wife." I opened the so-called evidence. On the screen played a long video. Ethan's roommates surrounded him, drunkenly egging him on, coaxing him to badmouth me. Ethan swayed, drunk out of his mind. But no matter how they pushed, he refused to open his mouth until one of them tricked him, saying, "Just repeat this one sentence and Emma will be yours for sure." Ethan immediately sat upright, agitated, and repeated the lying word for word. But then he frowned, anger flashing across his face as he snapped, "Emma is the most amazing person in the world. No one could ever compare to her. Say that again and don't blame me for losing my temper." I set the phone down. My heart knotted with confusion. Why would they do something like this? Ethan's expression twisted with both rage and helplessness. Before I went abroad, one of the professors leaked the preservation exam questions to Eric. They wanted to keep him there, but since my roommates were planning to stay, he used the leaked exam questions as bait. "Emma, tell me, how could 3 years of friendship mean nothing compared to a piece of paper that might not even have been real?" I hugged his arm tightly and shook it gently, trying to soothe him. People's hearts are unpredictable. What they did only made things harder for us, but at least the outcome turned out for the better. Don't let the past drag you down anymore. He bent down and pressed a light kiss to my forehead, smiling with rare ease. My dear wife is absolutely right. No point crying over spilled milk. The days of peace didn't last long. Out of the blue, my parents summoned Ethan and me to dinner. The move was so unusual that on the way over, we kept speculating about what it could mean. At the gate, we happened to see my sister Claire and Julia Miller being thrown out. Ethan and I exchanged a look, instantly knowing something serious had happened. Claire had always been their proud, flawless daughter, never once scolded harshly. For her to be kicked straight out of the house, the blow to her spirit must have been enormous. I rushed after her, meaning to offer a few words of comfort, but instead I saw her lift her head high, proud as a victorious general returning from battle. She turned to Julia with a smile. Well, this is better. I've been kicked out too. From now on, I'll have to depend on my wife to take care of me. Julia flushed, playfully scolding as she gave Claire a light push, then pulled her into her arms, their fingers intertwining tightly. I didn't chase after them. Instead, I turned back to Ethan. Are we going in? He asked. I shook my head. No need. They only called me back because their perfect creation developed a crack. So suddenly the defective one, me, looks acceptable again. Let's just go home. Ethan took my hand firmly, his voice steady as he countered. Emma, you are the most wonderful person in the world. Don't ever forget that. I made a show of nodding solemnly. Duly noted, Professor Tyler. The corners of his lips curved upward as he declared with exaggerated seriousness. Then let your professor teach you another truth. A proper marriage should be public. He handed me his phone, showing me a blurry, candid photo. I blinked. What's this? When we were out walking, someone snapped this. I paid to buy it back. My voice shot up in alarm. What? That $40,000 photo was me. Ethan rubbed his ear, looking aggrieved. Didn't you tell me before? Never let your identity as Mrs. Tyler be exposed. Otherwise, I'd be doomed. I was only following orders. I thought back, guilt tugging at me, and lowered my head. It was true. I had once said that marriage is always harsher on women, afraid it could collapse at any time. I had insisted that no detail of our wedding be leaked to the media, especially not my identity. Ethan had agreed immediately and followed through strictly. At any event with press coverage, he avoided being seen with me. Whenever possible, he made sure we didn't appear together. But I never imagined he would take it this far. $40,000. My heart ached and I sighed again and again. Seeing me so distressed, Ethan quickly tried to comfort me. Actually, it wasn't just one photo for $40,000. Altogether, it was $40,000 for a dozen or so times we were snapped. My jaw dropped. We were that careless? He nodded firmly. Yep. Then he began listing all the places we'd been photographed. By the end, I could only sulk in resignation, finally accepting his comfort. Well, I guess $40,000 was worth it. Ethan laughed so hard he couldn't close his mouth, his face full of smug delight. Since it's already out there, should we use this photo to make our relationship public? I hesitated slightly. At once, he put on a pitiful expression, his voice turning soft and coaxing. Could it be you still won't give me an official status? Ethan teased, his tone half joking but his eyes serious. He managed to make me laugh. In the end, all I could do was nod. Okay, but a few days from now. Why? Thinking of Sarah from the secretary's office, the one who had pestered me for a marriage without love, I couldn't help but chuckle. Because I don't want to scare my coworkers to death. I need to explain everything to her first. Ethan, though clearly not understanding, still nodded obediently. Silence stretched between us for a few seconds. Then he tilted his head slightly and asked softly, Have I really never told you that I love you? I lifted my head to look at him, a bright smile spreading across my face. You already have. His eyes flickered with confusion. When? 3 years ago, I answered, my voice steady. When you said, Emma is the most amazing person in the world.